Good morning and welcome to the September 20th, 2014 TV Toastmasters meeting. We're going to have a really great meeting today. We have two speakers. We will have table topics, which is our impromptu speaking, and we will also have the evaluation portion of our meeting, which will be giving feedback to the participants in our studio today. I have something I would like to do before I introduce our Toastmaster this morning, although the person I'm going to be presenting these awards to is also going to be our Toastmaster. One of the things that we accomplish in Toastmasters as we achieve different levels of education and leadership completion, the different manuals that we work on, Toastmasters International also provides a certificate to the individuals in recognition of their education and leadership achievements. What I'd like to do this morning is recognize two educational achievements. Actually, one is a leadership achievement and one is, actually, both of them are leadership achievements. Why does that not surprise me? And one will be for a competent leader, and the other is the Advanced Leader Bronze. These are the awards, and I'm going to call Toastmaster Carol up here. Carol, there is two award certificates here, one for your Competent Leader Award, and the other for your Advanced Leader Bronze. And Toastmasters doesn't tell us how many this is, but there's also a letter of recognition in here signed by the Chief Executive Director of Toastmasters, acknowledging your achievement as well. So, Competent Leader and Advanced Leader Bronze to Carol Kormelink.
Thank you very much. And I should have mentioned that you received one last year at the end of the year.
Yes, I did. Carol is also going to be our Toastmaster for our meeting today. And with that, I'm going to turn over the control of the lectern to you as our Toastmaster for our meeting today.
And thank you. Yes. And I didn't bring my other award that I got. I mean, I'm wearing it, but I didn't bring the letter. It says I have sponsored 5 members this year. I don't know if I got this upside down or not. Anyway, I have sponsored 5 members this year, and last year I was the leading sponsor of members in the district, and the guy said, I was trying to beat you, but you beat me. And I told him that, well, this year you probably will beat me because I'm going to see that more people bring in 5 new members, and I'd like to thank Melanie Jones, who brought in 2 new members this morning. So I'm expecting more people to bring in more people. Each one bring one, and we'll double our membership. I'm thrilled to be the president today, the Toastmaster of the day, and I would like to welcome our guest, Rob Pease, who is from Cincinnati 472. Let's give Rob a hearty welcome here. And Rob is working our camera today. We do have a couple announcements. The club is going to have an open house on Thursday, November the, what is the date? 6th. November the 6th on the Thursday. And Michelle is in charge of that. We'll be hearing more about that. The F-Loop Division contests are Saturday, October the 11th at the Springdale Community Center, and we need at 9:30. And we need to go and cheer Richard on, Melanie's husband. He won the Table Topics contest, so we need everyone to be supportive of him at Table Topics. And then the next big thing coming up, which you'll hear more about in Table Topics, is the District 40 Fall Conference, October the 24th to the 26th. As Toastmaster, I do want to know if you look on your agenda on Toastmaster, has the speaker given the evaluator exchanged their manuals? That's what that means. Our word of the day today is copacetic. I hope we have a copacetic meeting. I'm sure that we will have, which means it's an adjective and it means very satisfactory. The challenge is to see how many times you can use that when you're up here. This was our word of the day on Thursday at noon, and we had about 11 uses of it during the meeting. So we'll see if we can top that today. I will also be counting the killer filler words, the ahs, the ums, the you knows, the run-on sentences using and or so. I will now start with our prepared speeches. Our first speaker this morning will be Melanie Jones-Gant, and she's giving her icebreaker speech, her first speech. I can't wait to hear it, and it's called My Elevator Speech. Let us welcome Melanie Jones-Gant, My Elevator Speech.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I was asked a couple years ago what my elevator speech was. Well, if you've ever been asked that question, you're supposed to give a 30 second to about a minute speech. I couldn't do it. I could give my history. I got a bachelor's from Northern Kentucky University in applied cultural anthropology, which gave me appreciation of people and the ability to talk to everybody. I got a master's in public administration that gave me knowledge of public finance, public government, and local government management, and what a city manager form of government as well as a mayor form of government was. I've spent the last 6 to 10 years in public finance, working with bonds and stocks and evaluating and analyzing different required programs, and I've done grant administration. I've analyzed $1 billion budget. I can list off the points in my resume, but I can't give an elevator speech. I couldn't sit and look at someone and say, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. This is how I want to take my skill set and grow it. I was challenged by a good friend to come up with my 30-second elevator speech. Well, being me, I sat down with a pad of paper and a pen and started trying to write. I had a blank piece of paper for 10 months. Again, I could write my resume, I could tell you what I've done, my skills, my education, but I couldn't tell you what got me excited about what I do, what I could sell about myself, and how to make the world a better place while doing it. I love people, I could tell people that, and I wanted to help people. But that's not an elevator speech. That's something you hear on Sunday morning at church. I didn't want to be a preacher. So what did I want to do with my career? I found out after a lot of soul searching and talking to some very wise people that it was a part of what I do as a professional that I wanted to expand. The parts that I love that got me excited were working with nonprofits and government and the public to make public-private partnerships and to educate the public about what both government and nonprofits can do. Not only to help certain segments of the population, but actually how diverse nonprofits are. Be it from the NAACP, all the way to voter rights, all the way to loving dogs and neutering and spading. Nonprofits touch, as well as government touch, so many things in our lives that we're not aware of. The second thing that came out of it was I love grant writing, and I love writing and speaking. So the second part of my elevator speech was I want to be a grant administrator and a grant writer. Professionally, I've dealt with federal funds from the HUD, which is the Housing Urban Development. I've dealt with federal funds for highways. I've dealt with private foundation funds. Again, that's a check mark on your resume, not an elevator speech. So I looked at it and realized I wanted to be a great administrator and grant writer to help nonprofits not only reach out to individuals, but also reach out to funding sources and how diverse those funding sources are. Be it crowdsourcing with $1 from somebody from Walmart, you're standing in front with a bucket, all the way to writing $1 million grants. I also realized with my elevator speech that I wanted to train. I wanted to take those abilities and be able to share them with the nonprofit and the government sector so we could do what we're called to do. Because if nothing else on my resume, I like to talk. And my elevator speech had to include the ability to speak. Trying to put me in a cube for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, wasn't going to work. So my elevator speech ended up being about 4 sentences. I want to impact my community as a grant writer, a grant administrator, a trainer, and an educator, both through public-private partnerships, through government, and through administration, working with foundations, the general public, nonprofit, and government sectors. I came to Toastmasters specifically because I know this organization. I was a member prior, and I know that Toastmasters helps me be able to present to a wide variety of audience. I came to this club specifically because I get to be on camera, which is one of the skills I don't have. The second part of what I want out of Toastmasters is the ability to give constructive criticism and accept constructive criticism, because this has always been an environment that is very positive, both accepting and giving critiques, which is a very hard thing sometimes for you to take when it's your passion and your love. The third thing is I am a talker. I want to learn to listen. I want to use and be an active listener, not only my audience, but individuals, so that I can hear both their verbal cues and their nonverbal cues with the way they stand, the way they talk, the way they appear, and make sure that my message, as well as the message they're trying to communicate to the public, are getting across accurately. So my icebreaker, my elevator speech, I wrote before I came to Toastmasters. But Toastmasters is going to help me fulfill my elevator speech, mostly because I know this organization has that ability to change people. I watched a former member go from being a stutterer, which we met somebody this week that did, to be somebody who does present to his national business. And I want that. That's a skill I crave with meeting my elevator. So in conclusion, I'm grateful to be here. And I hope to be actively learning, actively critiquing, actively engaging in the process that Toastmasters brings out to every individual person. Madam Toastmaster.
And don't leave because
Okay.
this is your icebreaker ribbon that
Oh,
shows you have
awesome.
completed your
Thank
first
you.
project. And I can guarantee you when you finish your manual, it will get sent in. We will now have we will be back in a minute.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well.
I take pride in the word
There aren't any.
Because when it comes to a disease
Freedom
like this,
requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.
Welcome back. We will now come to our next speaker, Rick Barron, my good friend, who's an Advanced Communicator Bronze and Advanced Leader Silver. He is going to be speaking from the Persuasive Speaking Advanced Manual, giving project number 4 on addressing the opposition, and he is going to tell us about an unpopular proposal. An unpopular proposal, Rick Barron, Advanced Communicator Bronze, Advanced Leader Silver.
Thank you, Carol. What's happening to our country? Take that thought, push it aside for a minute. I'm going to reverse my speech and I'm going to give you my answer before I tell you the problem, so that you've got a chance to analyze it, to explore it, and to consider something that most are going to say, Rick, that is absolutely out of the question. Are you ready? My proposal is that men between the ages of 18 and 25, effective today, are now required to invest 1 year in the service of their country, selecting a branch of the armed forces and serving 12 months in that branch. You heard it right. Forced conscription for men in this country between the age of 18 and 25. America has always prided itself, since the fighting began in 1775, of an all-volunteer military. If you look across the world, there are 104 countries that do not require any form of service at all. 83 countries on the world require some form of service, some as much as 2 years. Why? Why would I say that we need to force our young men into the service of this country? Reflect back on what's happened. After World War II, we stopped going over there to fight for our allies, for our freedom, and our honor. And we started directing that stuff inward. Take a look at the destructive behavior that occurs all around us. Drug use is at an all-time high. Our jails are packed full of people who are not really criminals, but they are feeding habits, self-destructive habits. Take a look at our schools. Bullying is at an all-time high. We have children that are literally killing themselves because of the bullying that's occurring in our schools. Take a look at the murder-suicides. People who are harming not only themselves, but the people that they love and that should be the closest to them. You can't go a month without hearing about some disaster that has occurred somewhere, somehow, with someone who has taken whatever demon or rage that they have and have turned it inward, or have turned it against the people that should be closest to them. I have a friend from high school who loved to fight. His name was John. The interesting thing was John only fought people that needed to be beat up. It was kind of an interesting thing. And I guess it was really him that decided that this person needed to be beat up. But you know how it worked. After school, everybody would meet someplace and we'd all go to see the fight, right? John always won. But I wondered what would happen if he was getting the tar beat out of him. As I sat there and watched, I realized that I would have to step in and break it up. That I couldn't stand there and watch my best friend get cremated. What happens today? They pull out their cell phones, they hit record, and they capture it so that the humiliation can go on and on and on. What happened to the honor? What happened to standing up for our friends and those that we love? The millennial generation were those born between 1977 and 1994. There are 75 million of them, and there are 31.5 between the ages of 18 and 24. 31.5 million. I did some research online and I found a description of the generational differences over the past 4 generations. And when you think of somebody in that age group, what words come to mind? lacking focus, fiercely independent, eager to spend money, me first, self-absorbed, sense of entitlement, hooked to their gadgets, tech savvy. I'm sure adults have been complaining about youth for thousands of years. But when I hear those kind of words, I think to myself, wow, are we really in that much trouble? That we are so self-absorbed. How are we ever going to reach out and care for one another? Here's the details of my plan. When a male in this country is approaching his 18th birthday, he gets an invitation from the Selective Service to join a very exclusive club to register for the draft. In my proposal, there'll be an extra piece of paper in there. That extra piece of paper will outline where the local recruiters are for the local military services, and indicate that before their 25th birthday, they will be required to visit that recruiter and sign up for 1 year of service. Go to college first, and maybe use this as an opportunity to get some on-the-job training. Maybe go to a technical or trade school first, and then go in to do an apprenticeship. Or go directly in from high school and learn a skill or a trade. Either way, it fits all the way around. And by the way, young ladies, if you're interested, you can volunteer as well. It's not restricted to gentlemen. What happens if people don't show up? What happens, roll the clocks back to the 60s, when people were boycotting, signing up for the draft to go to Vietnam? What did we do? We pursued them with criminal intent. We don't need to do that these days. All we need to do is blackball them. One little check mark, someplace in some computer, anytime you go anywhere, someone will look at you and go, oh, you're one of those guys. That's all it takes. No courts, no fines, no nothing. Just a humiliation of its own kind. There are no violations of religious freedom required, right? Last time I checked, there was no religion that objected to painting a battleship, sweeping a runway, or doing laundry for a soldier. All things that could be done as part of their service. How would it be funded? I came up with a bunch of ideas on how to fund this. I finally decided on something that's probably even more controversial than my proposal here, and that is a federal sales tax. 1.5 cents on every dollar will raise $250 billion that will more than pay for the program that I'm recommending. Help me finish these slogans. Be all you can be, the Army. It's not just a job, it's an adventure, the Navy. The few, the proud, the Marines. Aim high, the Air Force. I did some research, and in a 2011 blog post by Lee Stanberry, he said the #1 issue facing our youth is erosion of national pride and identity. I submit to you that that is not only a problem with our youth, but that is a problem throughout our country. And that by taking our young men, the head of our households to be, and educating them, giving them something that they can take to learn teamwork, discipline, respect for themselves and others, we will take this country and elevate it to a brand new level. Thank you. I'll now accept questions from the audience. Sir.
Why don't you want to conscript women?
The question was, why don't I want to conscript women? What I did not want to do is to create new processes. The selective service already identifies the men. We know who they are. We already have a means to contact them. And at least in my program, I didn't want to add any additional cost by having to create a separate agency, separate process to actually go find them, contact them. But you're right. It could apply to women as well. I just didn't want to create something new that would add additional cost to the program.
During both World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, there were conscientious objectors who were thrown in jail for religious reasons, like the Amish and Mennonites, and there were Universalists. How would you address those individuals who, as a actual moral standing, do not believe in war and will not contribute in any form to the military?
The question was, how would I address people who have a moral or religious objection to contributing to the military in any form? I thought I addressed that in my presentation, is that there are ways to serve this country without holding a gun, without pulling a trigger, without flying an airplane. There are plenty of support roles that are necessary, civil service jobs. They could end up in the National Guard, and they could end up with flood victims, tornado victims, any of that kind of stuff that would allow these people to serve their country, to do their time, and to not be in a position where they are directly linked to some kind of military service. Ma'am?
Does the 1 year of service include the training aspect of it, or how would you incorporate the training? Is that something you do first and then follow up with the year of service?
The question was, how does the training work in that 1 year? And the 1 year is inclusive. So if somebody, for instance, wants to be a pipe welder, and the training for pipe welding is 6 months, they're not going to get a whole lot of time out of the 6 months. So obviously, they may choose to extend that apprenticeship into a second year so that they actually have time to be able to perfect their trade. So obviously, you can extend the time if you want to. If you're not getting out of it what you want to get out of it, you're allowed to extend the time, but the commitment is only for a year.
I'd like to know, this is a follow-up on your second to last question, why you don't consider groups like Volunteers in Service to America and the Peace Corps and some of these other groups. Why does it have to be a military conscription?
The question was, why does it have to be a military conscription? I'm open to other ideas. My goal was to place people in organizations that I know will teach them structure, that I know will teach them discipline, that I know will teach them about teamwork, that I know will teach them about respect for themselves and others, and personally I don't have any experience or exposure to those. If those groups can demonstrate that they have the ability to provide those kinds of skills and experiences, there's no reason why the program could not be opened up to include any organization that can take and mold individuals to the people that we want to be our future leaders. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Rick, for that copacetic proposition. We will be back in one moment.
Thank you very much. And now for our next speaker, Stanley Glitchner.
Speaking in public doesn't have to be a death sentence. At Toastmasters, we can help you overcome your fears.
Welcome back. We now go to the most important part of Toastmasters. That's the listening, responding, giving feedback for the speakers. Our general evaluator today will take the next part of the meeting, And that will be Steve Aaronholtz, Distinguished Toastmaster, Steve Aaronholtz, General Evaluator.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, our guests, and those of you looking in from home. As Carol mentioned, this is the portion of the meeting where we are going to be receiving feedback on the things that were done well. We're also going to hear about some things that we might want to consider possibly doing a little differently or incorporating some other approaches that will actually enhance our ability to communicate even better. My evaluation team today I will be calling upon. They'll have different roles. We'll have 2 speakers that will be doing evaluations of the speeches that you've just heard. We also have an individual that will be giving us our grammarian and counter feedback. This is where we will be looking at some of our crutches that we use in our speaking, as well as some possibly creative or incorrect applications of English. And then we will end our evaluation portion of the meeting with our timers report, which is where we will hear how well we've been able to keep on time with the time allocations for the different presentations. And then I'll provide an overall evaluation of our meeting and the evaluators themselves. My first team member that is going to be giving us an evaluation this morning is Michelle Lewis. She is a competent communicator and a competent leader. She's going to be giving us her evaluation of Melanie Jones-Gant icebreaker speech, my elevator speech. Help me welcome Michelle Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Fellow Toastmasters, guests looking in, and specifically Melanie, very copacetic speech today. Your objectives were to begin speaking before an audience, to discover speaking skills you already have, and some skills that need attention. The interesting thing is, Melanie is not a first-time Toastmaster, and you could clearly tell that today. You stood up here, you have great presence, and that's the one thing I love about you. Your facial expressions are to die for. So you can tell a whole story just by the way you use your facial expression. So that would probably be one of your strongest points. You have great presence. You were very calm. So even though you told me prior to this speech that you were nervous, no one could tell. You did not use notes. And for someone who's doing an icebreaker speech to not use notes, that's fantastic. I didn't catch any grammatical errors, and you had great voice inflection. Do a very good job of that. And also incorporating humor. I loved your comment about your paper being blank for 10 months and that you don't intend to be a preacher even though you have the skills to be, and so forth. We did get to learn a lot about you from a career standpoint. We know why you're here at Toastmasters, which is really valuable information for all of us, because then we can help you be accountable for why you're here. You clearly defined what your goals were for being a part of our club, and we are excited. And you also gave some pub to Toastmasters, which was something we always like to hear. You obviously were well prepared, and you spoke clearly and audibly. You had a definite opening, body, and conclusion. And one of the things that you may want to focus on, which I had a very hard time giving you critical feedback, was something you called out in your I can't even think of it. Your impromptu speaking, your table topics, was you don't slow down at all. You don't take pauses. Rick Barron is the guru of pauses, and you sit there and so maybe start watching him when he gives speeches and how well he does at incorporating pauses. That was probably the only thing I can think of today that you could have used a little improvement on. And what I really liked about your presentation, as I mentioned, you told us the parts of your elevator speech, you gave it to us, and then you told us why you were here. And the one other thing I wanted to mention, I really liked your use of the word actively, and how you told us that you are going to actively be here, you're going to be a part of our club, and you're actively going to pursue your goals. So thank you so much, and I look forward to your next speech.
Thank you, Michelle, for a nice evaluation of Melanie's speech. Our next evaluator that we will hear from is Melanie Jones-Gant, and she's going to be giving us feedback from her perspective on Rick Barron's speech, An Unpopular Proposal. Help me welcome Melanie.
Thank you, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and especially Rick. That was a hard presentation. It was very effective. And like the former evaluator said, you had great uses of pauses and pulling your audience in. You did a very good general appeal, and I think you had very strong facts in it. But because I know you're a older Toastmaster, that's not a right word, seasoned Toastmaster, when you hit the definitions of millennials and the ages of millennials, I stopped in my tracks. I'm a millennial. I found the use of what was defined as millennials as insulting. Now, when I say insulting, I don't mean like you offended me so much I'm going to run out of the room. What I mean is that the things that you were quoting were not effective for me as an audience member, because I am a millennial. I am tech savvy. I am very independent, but I'm very community oriented too. Most millennials have a big definition of wanting to change the world, as well as being very active in volunteer organizations. And there are a lot of different research out there to support that. So the speech itself was very effective, and I was persuaded to that point. What I would recommend of changing in the presentation is not to focus on the millennials, but the facts about the millennials. How many people are in jail? How many people are in prison? Give me facts, not persuasion about a certain group of people. Because I know enough about the baby boomer generation to know the same thing was said in the 60s about them. Taking the presentation farther, too, is that I find facts about it, and especially the military and the Army, and what those individuals, once they left the Army, would be very effective too. I know that a lot of members of Congress are former military. I know a lot of CEOs are military. I know a lot of people who are more advanced are military. I think that would be more effective to your audience to convince them that this generation needs those leadership skills and those structure to help them become effective Americans, which I think was the point of your presentation, making our country greater. I think you handled the question and answers with wonderful grace. And I think that they were some hard questions. Your audience was very direct. I think that you addressed one of my problems with your presentation because I am a woman. I would want to see it for both sexes. And you addressed that beautifully with one of your answers. You also dealt with my response about organizations with conscientious objectors, as well as the volunteer organizations, which was one of my own critiques of your presentation until you answered the Q&A. So I would consider maybe making that an end point that say you don't have an experience, but your proposal could be expanded, and here's how. I think overall you were very positive, very straightforward, and a proposal that I personally do not agree with. But it was persuasive to someone who is completely on the opposite end of your comment. But like I said, my really only effectiveness and what stopped me with the conversation was definitely when you got into the millennial, because it's a generational difference in perspective. And when your audience may be a wide variety of people, because millennials are even in Congress now, that may be one thing you want to address if you're going to use this as something to talk to the general public with. Thank you, Rick. Mr. Table.
Wow. Thank you, Melanie. Nice evaluation. Wow. All right. As my general evaluator role, I'm taking some notes for feedback during my portion of the evaluation session. Now we're going to hear how well we've done on our timing, and I understand that we are running down on the amount of time left for our meeting. So, without further delay, I'm going to invite our timer, BJ Harris. BJ?
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Hello,
I'm BJ Harris, your timer for today. And today we spoke on the table topics of what it would take to be interested in coming to the fall conference. And although Rob had a lot of good ideas of what it would take for him to be, he spoke only 42 seconds. So Melanie also gave us a good discussion about what it would take for her to come to the fall conference, and she spoke 1 minute and 16 seconds. Okay, then we had our speakers for today, and Melanie Jones-Gant gave us a talk, her icebreaker talk, a little bit about an elevator speech, and she spoke 6 minutes and 30 seconds, well within the timing. Rick Barron gave us he called it an unpopular proposal. It was a very creative and radical proposal, and it took 10 minutes and 20 seconds to give the presentation, and then he had 2 to 3 minutes for questions, and it was a highly interested topic, so he went over to 14 minutes and 6 seconds because he had a lot of questions and answered those very well. Then we go to the evaluators. Michelle did an evaluation of Melanie's speech, and she took 2 minutes and 50 seconds. And then Melanie gave an evaluation, and she took 3 minutes and 34 seconds. So thank you, viewing audience, Toastmasters, and guests.
Thank you, PJ. Okay. My role as general evaluator is to provide some overall perspective on our meeting, as well as to provide some input to each of the people that you've just heard in their evaluation roles. I'm going to start with that first. I have some comments for Michelle on Melanie's icebreaker speech. Michelle, I really liked the way you engaged Melanie. I mean, you talked to the audience here, but you also spoke directly to Melanie, which was something that I was actually looking for. One of the other things I liked was your use of gestures when you're talking, because you were talking about voice inflections, and your hands were going up and down. I thought, well, that's just the way the sound waves go when you have inflections in your voice. I could tell that you were listening, and you provided some specifics, and you acknowledged that it was a challenge to find some things, but that's part of the evaluation process. We just listen, and you have to listen closely. So good job. My second evaluator today is Melanie, that you evaluated Rick's speech. Interesting evaluation, because a lot of times evaluations that we hear will talk about some of the mechanics, which you had in there. But I also like the fact that you shared some of your perspective, because that's what we speak from when we do an evaluation. We speak about how we perceived it, because that's the only position we can really speak from, and some of our perceptions on it. And you used it to give him some additional thoughts about how he could enhance his speech. You also, I think, presented some sensitivities to part of the audience that he's actually talking about. I myself am a boomer, and I find that I'm probably more in your court as far as looking at this. I do have a draft card. So that's where some of my questions came from. A very good evaluation of Rick's speech. So thank you. Rob, your evaluation of our grammar and use of Oz. I know that that's always a challenge to listen to the different crutches that people use and everything, and I like the fact that you provided some specifics for us. So that's very good. Thank you. And BJ, what I liked about your evaluation, as far as giving us the times, is that you not only give us the time for the different roles, but you actually have just a little bit of what the role was, and if it was within the time allocation, and for some of them even what the time allocation is. So thank you. I like that, because it was a little bit more than just bam, bam, bam. You know, these were the times. Our meeting got started pretty much today within the time frame that we aim for. Since we do have to edit this, we don't have to start strictly on the hour, but we do have to stay within our 59-minute allocation that we have. We have a small group here today. I'd really like to see more people coming, but that as a club is something we're going to have to work on in this coming year. I want to thank everyone that participated in today's meeting. I think it was very nice, and we had a nice balance of things. I'm going to turn it back to our Toastmaster. Oh, all right. She tells me that I don't need to do that. I am going to go ahead then, and I have a couple of comments here just in general, and then we will adjourn our meeting. As Carol mentioned at the beginning, the Loop Division Contest is October 11th. That's a Saturday morning. Richard Gant is going to be representing TV Toastmasters in Area 52 as our representative in the Table Topics Contest. One of the other things I would encourage you to do is to consider going to the contest, because our area governor certainly could use some help with some of the different roles that are needed as far as completing a contest. Our what? Our division governor? Okay, that's right. The area governors turn it over to the division governors, but they're still looking for people to help judge, and we always need audience participation or attendees. Our next meeting will be on October 2nd. That's a Thursday evening. We meet at 6 p.m. And then our next Saturday meeting will be on October 18th. You will see this program in October. The October meeting will be in November. We haven't talked about whether we want to do anything for Halloween. We'll have to talk about that. I would encourage those of you who are here to sign up for roles for our next meetings. Those of you who are looking in, if you're interested in coming to attend one of our meetings in person, which we would certainly love to have you come and check us out. We are located in the Anderson Center, their television studio, which is in the lower level. The facility is located at 7850 5 Mile Road in Anderson. We generally start on Saturdays about 9 a.m. Thursday evenings we start about 6 p.m. And I would like to have you feel free to come and visit us once, multiple times, or if you'd like to join. We have some new members who joined today which weren't able to stay, but we look forward to their participation in our upcoming meetings. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the September 20th, 2014 TV Toastmasters meeting.